In this video, you will learn a comprehensive workflow for analyzing, scoring, and optimizing your Amazon product images, including how to categorize competitor images, conduct market research, and test different image variations. You will see how to do all of this using data dive tools. And if you want to try this software for yourself, find the special offer and the link below in the description.
Hello, Anthony. It's awesome to have you back on Orange Klik YouTube channel today to talk about conversion optimizations. And we know that you always have very good and informative tips to share with our sellers. So we're really excited for today's session. But as always, before we start, could you first introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background, and also shortly give us an overview how Data Dive is helping Amazon sellers to succeed?
You bet. Hey, what's up, everyone? My name's Anthony Cofrancesco from Data Dive. I've been in the Amazon FBA industry since 2017. I actually used to work for Amazon first part of my career back in the day. I launched my first product on Amazon before starting a full-time job there. I worked there for about a year. I quit my job, moved out to the Philippines, and grew a creative agency called Virtuous Graphics, probably one of the first conversion optimization agencies for Amazon's FBA specifically. I ran that for 2 years. We grew it to a team of more than 25 full-time creatives. That was in Manila in the Philippines. We exited that business in 2019, and I wanted to stay in the industry. I could see that it was going nowhere but up. And so I switched over and worked with Pickfu. It's a market research tool. I was there for 2 years, really doing a lot of training, a lot of content, just trying to get everyone in the industry to know about market research and the importance of creative testing. So I did that for 2 years, and then I moved over to Data Dive and Seller Systems. So Seller Systems is our larger parent company where we have more than 1,000 students. We teach fundamental practices of how to sell on Amazon FBA. We created a software tool for our users called Data Dive. I'm sure many people who subscribe to this channel are already users. We have more than 6,000 paid users on the platform. We've been growing it for a few years. And we also do a conference every year. And we're going to be doing it in May this year called Camp Ecom. So our big thing with Data Dive is we're trying to look at every aspect of selling on Amazon, from product validation to launching to optimization, and say, how can we make it not only go faster, but how can we make our users be more effective with what they're doing? So things that used to take hours are moving to take minutes, and eventually will be fully automated. But then it's not just that the work is getting done, that you're actually able to make a significant impact in the business.
Sounds really good. And I think a lot of people know you also in the space already for years. And I'm really happy that today you're going to talk about conversion optimization, because obviously you have massive experience working with different Amazon sellers and helping them to optimize their products to sell more products. I know you have prepared some content for us as well to follow you along while you're sharing the information and tips with us. So let's get started straight away to learn from you.
Sounds good. Well, I'm going to start off with his conversion optimization is something that is near and dear to my heart. And it's, I think, one of the biggest ways that you can make an impact into your business in terms of improving your performance, making more sales, grabbing more market share. But it's also, out of everything that Data Dive touches, it's the most time intensive. You're going to spend certainly the most time preparing for it. In most cases, you're going to spend a significant amount of money investing into this area. And so how I want to start is with a case study that I've been putting together with another company called Shared Studio for more than a year now. And it is kind of an interesting story because I teach office hours for Data Dive 3 times a week. It's a big learning curve, so I'm always trying to put new topics in front of the audience. And I would pick a product, a niche rather, over and over again. And it just so happened that someone who was affiliated with that product, with that brand, joined office hours. And I kept showing their product. And what was interesting about this product is it was perfect from an SEO standpoint. They're pretty much #1 organic ranked for everything, but their images were just not good at all. They had a very basic main image, only three out of the 6 images in their gallery that were filled out. And so when this person approached me, I said, hey, can you put me in touch with the owners of the brand? Because I think this is slam dunk case study and we can really improve the performance of this. And so I got in touch with the brand owners, and then a friend of mine, Raphael, who runs an agency called Shared Studio, I said, hey, how would you feel about like making this into a public case study? So I'm not going to show any of the images today, but the whole point about this niche is that this is a number one seller. They had like 30,000 plus reviews. And even though they were the dominant player in the niche, over the years, more and more competitors were coming in with amazing images, amazing branding, and they were losing market share. Like every single month, they were losing more and more market share. And so this case study is about this brand at their lowest point that we saw, doing about $250,000 a month in revenue, which maybe for some of you doesn't sound small at all. That's a multi-million-dollar a year business. But after we were able to update their main images, secondary images, add A+ content to the listing, create some videos for sponsor brand video, now that brand, their most recent month, I was on a call with them a couple of days ago, they just broke $820,000 in the month, which is the most they've ever done on that brand. And that is almost exclusively from main image updates, secondary image updates, sponsor brand video assets. And it's just a really, really powerful thing. So again, I'm not showing any of we had to agree with the brand that we would wait until after Q4 to show what the image assets look like. But this is us tracking the revenue. You can see in June, like $250,000 a month, July getting up to 400 grand a month. And this is the improvements in unit session percentage. So this is conversion rate sitting around like 21.5, 22%, jumping up to 25%. And click-through rate, I won't address main image too much in this presentation, but like the first image that we created, the V1 of our main image, took the click-through rate to 3.25%. We tested a different version of the main image. It dropped down to 2%. And so what we think is when we put all of this together, by the end of the year, we're expecting the brand, hopefully our goal is to break $1 million a month. They had dropped down to about 25% market share. They're now over a 35% market share, and it looks like it's trending towards, they might even be able to get 50% of the market share, really as a result of main image updates, secondary image updates, and A+ content. And so, yeah, I won't spend too much time going into this, but the whole point here is if you're sitting there and you're thinking, does this stuff actually work? Is it worth it, my time to invest in this? I can't encourage you enough. What I'm going to be sharing with you today is something that I've been working on for a while. I call them workflows at Data Dive. So there's a lot going on inside a Data Dive, and it can be a little overwhelming when you first get started. The goal with workflows is to show what's the intended flow, what's the intended use of the tool step by step. And so we have workflows now for validate. Launch is coming soon, but then we have 4 different parts of our optimized workflow. Optimized SEO, which tells you how to update your listing. Optimized CTR, which really focuses on main image. And then optimized CVR, which is what we're going to cover today, conversion optimization. And then optimized revenue, which is getting into the PPC realm of things. So right now, anyone can access these. You can go to datadive.tools/workflow, and then you can basically get this pretty comprehensive PDF guide that walks you through everything. And so this is what I'm going to spend a little bit of time going through and doing today. I guess what I want to mention is this is one of the longer workflows. So if you've seen the workflow that we've shown for SEO, that's going to take you like under 30 minutes to optimize your listing once you've done this a few times. You've probably seen the workflow that we've shared for product validation, right? This is like a 45-minute workflow. Optimizing CVR is something that's going to take you hours to do. And this doesn't mean the creation of the image assets. This is really just around concepting. But the reason that I wanted to share that case study first is to show you it's worth the time, it's worth the effort to put this in. I was just teaching a workshop, a conversion optimization and PPC workshop at the AMZ Innovate event in New York with Brandon, the owner of Seller Systems. And I went around the room. There was 15 sellers that were all doing 10 million plus a year on Amazon. And I asked them 3 questions. I said, when's the last time that you updated your main image? When's the last time that you updated your secondary images or A+ content? And are you currently running any manager experiments? I'd say it was about 25% of the group that said yes to any of those answers. Most of the people, and I'm sure individuals watching this video can relate, you haven't touched something on your listing, especially the creative assets, in a long time. So this is your motivation. I'm going to get into why you need to focus on this, but just to set some expectations. Before, I think most people, they might spend a month or more concepting and going through the process before they get their images created. I think the first time that you go through this workflow, it's going to take you about 6 hours. And then once you've done this 5+ times, I think it's going to take about 4 hours. Now, this is one area of Data Dive that isn't automated yet. The minute that I got into Data Dive, I was like, man, I really want to improve this area of the tool, and I want to shrink the time that it takes. But we're a bootstrap software company, so we have to have priorities. A big priority for us has been PPC. And so hopefully in 2025, we're going to work on slimming this down from time. But with all that being said, I think it is worth it to go through and do all of this. So the workflow I've broken down into 6 steps. First, you're going to analyze and really categorize the images in your niche. Basically, you're going to see what is currently out there, and you're going to see what image types currently exist in the niche. After we categorize the images, we're going to score the images. I'm going to show you 2 different ways that you can objectively score images. Then we're going to create the concepts and then either hand them off to our internal team or work with an agency to bring those image concepts to life. Then we're going to do market research. We're going to upload the image assets into Amazon, set up tracking inside of Data Dive, and then over time, we're going to optimize for performance, go deeper and deeper and deeper. So before I get into the nuts and bolts of the workflow, I'm going to spend a couple minutes here going through the essential framework. And this, for me, hasn't changed over the past few years that I've been in the industry. When you understand these parts, I think it makes what we're doing in the information categorization, the image categorization rather, and concepting make a lot more sense. So a few things to remember. Number one is that the human brain is really just a giant graphics processor. Yes, it's keeping your heart beating. Yes, you can feel the chair you're sitting on. Yes, you can hear things going on in the background, but mainly what your brain is used for is to process visual information. 90% of all of the information, everything that's going on in your brain is just transmitting what is going on in your visual field and how your brain is going to use that to make decisions about how to interact with the world. And this is happening faster than you can possibly imagine. It's happening on a subconscious level. And so the human brain is going to process an image 70,000 times faster than text. So while you're watching me here on the screen right now, or maybe looking at the slides, believe it or not, your brain is processing things that are anywhere inside of your visual field, and it's making impacts on, again, what decisions you want to make in your life. And this comes into play from an Amazon standpoint, because when someone is shopping on the Amazon platform, they have an extremely high intent to buy the product that they're looking at. So we have this captivated audience. And what I call this is, it's kind of like you're hacking the brain. When someone's looking at your listing, you have a direct line into the primary decision maker, and the visuals that you're showing them are going to strongly influence whether they buy your product or a competitor's. And this point is really important because the vast majority of the time rather, that someone is shopping on Amazon, they're going to buy a product. In fact, the average conversion rate of a prime shopper is 74%. And this statistic was years ago. I'm sure it's gotten even higher now. And you might be looking at this and say, well, my conversion rate isn't 74%. What's going on? Even the listing that I showed you a minute ago, their unit session percentage is fantastic, now breaking 25%. It's nowhere near 74%. What's going on? And the reality is, someone who shops on Amazon, 74% doesn't mean your conversion rate is 74%. It means on the platform, when they're searching for a product, they're going to convert 75% of the time. So what is happening is someone might land on your listing, but if you don't convince them in a very short amount of time that your product is the one they should be adding to the cart, they're going to click around. They're going to look at competitors. And while they might buy something in the niche, we have to work very hard to convince them that our product is the one that they should actually be converting on. And when I'm talking about we're hacking the brain and we have a direct line of communication with the primary decision maker, it sounds really good. And you might think that someone is, when they're shopping on your Amazon listing, they're totally zoned in. They've got their credit card out with a big smile on their face and they're ready to buy the product. They're going to look at every single image that you have, read all of your A+ content, watch your videos, read all the reviews. But the reality is a little bit different. When someone's shopping on Amazon, they're usually engaged in distracted shopping. So they've got their phone out, the kids running around in the background, all of this craziness going on in the world. And what they really want to do is they want to get in, they want to get out, and then they want to get back on with their lives. They're just looking for a specific problem, a specific product rather, to solve a specific problem, and they just want to get back to their lives. And so what we have to do is we have to tailor our listing to be effective in a distracted shopping environment. So let's say, for example, we have an image gallery with 6 slots. If the first image in that gallery doesn't communicate with the shopper, it doesn't check off the boxes in their head of what they're looking for, we might lose someone at that point. You might not get them to go on to image 2, 3, 4, etc. And so again, if we have an image gallery with 6 spots and 3 out of the 6 images in that gallery don't hit the point that the shopper is looking for, that's when you're going to see bounces. That's when someone's going to go to a competitor listing and see if they do a better job of addressing the things that they're specifically looking for. And so we'll get into this in the workflow a little bit, but like, think about the view percentage of images in your gallery. That vast majority of people are going to see the first image, but a fewer percentage are going to see the last image in the gallery. And so if we think like 90% of the people will see image 1, only 20% of the people might get down to the 5th image. It's not really like it's a 20-20 split or 20% split across 5 categories here. It might look more like, if we're doing a weighted percentage, that the images in the bottom of your gallery are getting a very low view percentage. And so the whole point about this is it's not just about creating the images that look really good. In this case study that I just showed, we I think knocked a home run here with the first version of our image gallery. But now what we're doing is actually testing what would happen if we move the image in position number 3 to 1. What would happen if we change the order of images in our gallery? So I think I'm probably getting a little bit too into the weeds here. This is something that we actually do inside of the workflow. Is we got to be selective with what we actually put into the listing. And so one of the things that we're going to do in a few minutes is you're going to make 3 different lists. And in list number 1, it's going to be the longest list. This is going to be all of the things that you could possibly say about the product, down to features, benefits, things about your brand. In the middle, we have a list that's a little bit smaller. And this is, what does the shopper need to know before they buy the product? And then the smallest list all the way on the right-hand side is, what is actually shown inside of the listing? What do you actually have space for? Okay, so now we're getting into the workflow. If you go to datadive.tools/workflow, you can follow along on your own. I'm going to do some of this in slides, some of this in I'll do a little bit of screen sharing. So step number 1 in the workflow is you're going to analyze the images in deep dive. And so how you do that, on the left-hand side of your screen, you're going to see this tab for deep dive. And then if you click the arrows pointing in at each other, it's going to collapse all of the image galleries so that they're all in one spot. So now I can see all of the competitors for my niche. I can look at their galleries very easily. And then for image categorization, what we're going to do is we're going to put the images in our niche into one of roughly 15 different groups. And where this comes from is, about 2 years ago, I had a VA. I gave him like 100 different products. And I said, I want you to categorize these images by type and put them into a Google Drive folder. And what we found is that something like 80% of all of the images on the platform fell into, or not on the entire platform, but of the images that we looked at, for the products we looked at, 80% of them fell into one of these 15 groups. So we've got main image, which I think is self-explanatory, product anatomy, which is like you have a graphic that's pointing to different areas on the product and it's saying what they do. A metric graphic, which is exactly what it sounds like, highlighting a quantifiable point of the product. A how-to graphic, pretty straightforward, explaining how a product is supposed to be used. Applications graphic, which is showing the different applications of a product. So it's like a power bank, and it's saying that this can be used while hiking, you can use it for travel, whatever it might be, your different customer avatars. A single feature or benefit graphic can be anything, but it's just one singular point, one singular benefit, one singular feature, versus a multi-feature as you're covering multiple features in one single graphic. The topic can be whatever you want, but they follow this kind of format. We've got testimonial, UGC, safety, which is sometimes about safety, but also it can be about compatibility. So if you had a tech product and it's saying like you can charge your phone using this type of cable, whatever it might be. Sizing graphic, very common. Inclusions, talking about what's included in the product. A competitor comparison, and then seasonal specific graphics. So these can be like a gifting graphic, a seasonal holiday, and then a lifestyle graphic, which typically what we're going to see is a lifestyle as a single feature. So it's like one singular point as a lifestyle image. When I'm thinking of a pure lifestyle, it's usually just the lifestyle scene. There's usually no text on the screen. And so what you're going to do is thinking about these groups. Sometimes images will fall out of these groups. Sometimes they're a little bit different. But generally, you're gonna start to see the same thing over and over again. And so inside of our workflow, I'm going to hop over real quick. We've covered all of this so far, navigate and deep dive, secondary image matrix. If you're inside of the workflow, you can click on this button here, and it'll actually take you to a sheet that I created, access to anyone, and it gives you these steps for this workflow. Again, this process is a little bit manual right now. I think in the future, we'll integrate some automations into Data Dive. At least that's my hope. But you can see here, I've got step one is my secondary image categorization. And this is for a product that we were working on, an office hours example, which is kids' binoculars. And so I spent, I think it was about 90 minutes doing this entire section. You can see I've got my competitors listed here. And then I'm just categorizing the images by type. So you can see I've got like single feature. It's talking about compatibility for these binoculars with eyeglasses. We've got like anatomy graphics. Single feature, it's talking about the zoom of the binoculars. You can see that I've categorized all of these here. On top of that, what I've done is I've categorized, I think it's 4 of the A+ content. And what I've done is I just have the A+ module 1, module 2, module 3, and then some of the products had brand stories as well. And all I'm trying to do here is just get an idea for what's going on in the niche and come up with some general categorization as to what's the purpose of this image. And I'm trying to put it into one of these groups. So moving on here. So we categorize our secondary images by type. Again, this is going to take you a couple hours to do. You can set, we have trainings on this on the Data Dive website. And then just as a point, this is going to help us when we get into concepting is you're going to analyze the AI product brief. So this is another tool inside of Data Dive rather. You can find it on the left-hand side of your screen. And it's going to show you things like what are the important features in the product? What do customers like about the product? What do they dislike? What are your customer avatars? I still like doing the image categorization, especially if you're new to conversion optimization, just because you're going to get a really good lay of the land on what your competitors are already doing. What you're going to find is when you run this through the AI product brief, you're going to see the exact same thing over and over again. And so there's not going to be any surprise. When I look at my image categorization, I'm going to see like people for these kids' binoculars, they want to know like, what are my applications? Where can I use this? Is it good for bird watching? What are the, what's the zoom? Is this durable? And when I go into the AI product brief, it's going to tell me almost the exact same thing. I like to include both of these in the workflow just because, again, this is, a lot of people say, hey, Anthony, you're really good at conversion optimization. and they think it's this kind of magic superpower, but it's really just pattern recognition. And it's just because I've seen tons and tons of images over the years. And so I know I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but like the cheat way to, instead of doing image categorization, would be to only run the AI product brief and use that for your image concepts. But again, I encourage you to just practice, get good at this. Once you've categorized the images for like 2-3 niches, you're going to be infinitely better than you are when you just, before you've done any, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So once we've categorized all of the images in our niche, then we move on to image scoring. So image scoring, I have two different tests. One is a 3-point scoring system where I'm asking myself 3 questions. Number 1 is, do I understand the purpose of the image? Number 2 is, are all concepts in the image related and cohesive? And then number 3 is the image visually impressive? So if I look at this neck pillow here, we have 3 different images and they have 3 different scores. So I'm just going to explain this very quickly. If you've been to Orange Click events in the past, you might have seen this. The goal of this is to come up with an objective way to score an image, and it's getting back to that essential framework that I covered earlier, that like people are shopping, they're distracted, you can't give them too much all at once, and you have to communicate directly with the brain. So the point is, and you're going to see this when you do image categorization, that you're going to see the same type of image over and over and over again. And so the point of this image here is to show for this neck pillow, it doesn't matter what position you put your head in, it's going to be comfortable. It's about like the 360-degree support. So image number 1, I understand the purpose of the image. It's obviously about 360-degree support, but not all of the items in the image are related and cohesive. We've got all of this extra stuff here. Some of it's talking about the density of the pillow. It's talking about like different areas on the pillow that aren't related to support. And then I didn't give it any points for being visually impressive, because if I'm comparing this image on the left to the image on the right, this one looks a lot better. So that one just gets 1 point. For image number 2, we get a little bit better because I understand the purpose of the image. Unlike image number 1, where it's talking about things not related to head position, everything here is telling me about head position, right? It's showing the pillow, it's showing the different position. And then if I'm looking at all 3 of these images, I'm not going to give it a point for is it visually impressive, because again, I think this one is the most. When I'm doing the scoring, I often use half points. So I think this one was a little bit harsh. You could probably give this 2.5 points. So I understand the purpose. Everything's related and cohesive. And it's half a point for visual appeal. The image on the right-hand side, I think, is the best. You understand the purpose. Everything is related and cohesive. What I like about this is, instead of using 50% of the pixel space to show the product, that's not the point of this graphic. The point of this graphic is to show head position. And this uses like 80, maybe 90% of the pixel space solely on showing the head positions. So that's why I'm going to give this 3 out of 3 points. I've done this a handful of times at different workshops, events. I find that people are very aggressive when they're scoring, and so that's totally fine. I think most people would look at this. I don't know. Anyway, I think this is just to help you wrap your head around it. Okay, so that's the first test that we do. It's the image score test. And then the other is I'll show you in the sheet real quick. So if I go here to step 2 in the sheet, you can see I've gone through and I've scored the images in my gallery, in the niche rather. You can see some are as high as 3, some don't get any points. You can use half points to score. All of this, if I'm going a little bit quick, like all of this is inside of the guide. Pretty straightforward stuff here. The whole point about this is like, you can download the images inside of Deep Dive. You can just right click on an image, download. What I like to do is put them all in a folder. So if I'm looking at my categorization, like Control F, anatomy, like I'll take all of the anatomy graphics, I'll put them all into one folder. And then it makes it really easy when I'm going through and scoring, and I can be like, oh, which one looks the best? Which one looks the worst? If it's your listing, it should be easy to get 3s for everything. If you've never thought about images in this way, you might find that your images are scoring less. When you're looking at competitors, you want to try to get an idea of like, why are these getting a higher score? Why are some images getting a lower score? And the idea is you're going to be able to have everything be a 3. Anyway, let me get back to the deck here. So the second test that we do is what I call a 5-second test. Basically, what you're going to do with this, and this is about like the human brain processing images extremely fast, that people are in this distracted shopping environment. And the whole point of the 5-second test is you show your image to someone who has no prior knowledge of the product. You show it to them for 5 seconds, and then you take it away and you say, what was the purpose of that image? And you really only let them look at it for 5 seconds. So like you count it down, and then you repeat for all of the images in the gallery. And this is a pretty good example of this. These are all images for cooling towels. And so how it would work in practice, this one passes the 5-second test. And the whole point of this graphic is to show you that this product is made with high quality materials and it's going to cool better. And so basically, this is what I thought the purpose of this image was. I tested this with someone who had no knowledge of the product, and their response matched up what my goal for the image was. This one, though, did not pass the 5-second test. So the goal of this image, this is an applications graphic. It's supposed to show that you can use this not only when you're hiking, but you can use it when you're sick. You can use it in the gym. You can use it for all of these different applications. But when I showed this image to someone with no knowledge of the product, what they thought the purpose of this graphic was is that you can use this product outdoors. And so you'll see that I went through and scored, I'm scoring the secondary images and the A+ content. And I actually got my girlfriend to help me out with it. I was showing her some of the images in the gallery, and I had her look at them for 5 seconds. And I was basically scoring. I only had one person. If you have an internal team, you can, or family or friends, you can get your numbers up on these. And most images should pass the 5-second test. It's more like if these fail, then it's really bad, especially if you're testing with multiple people and multiple people are getting it wrong. Most people on Amazon, I think, aren't going to get the purpose of that image. Now, this workflow that I'm showing you this is like the most manual way of doing this. I'm already putting together, like I recorded some content with Peter Paul from IntelliVie last week. So there's going to be like a follow-up to these workflows that are like, this is IntelliVie's guide for PVR. This is Product Opinion's guide for CVR. This is PickFu's guide for CVR. And what I'll say is like, this is the most manual way of doing this. If you just want to like spend some money and just like these market research tools already have tests that kind of cover this. The only difference is you have to pay money, which I think in a lot of cases is going to make sense. So this is going to be time consuming. I think I spent another 90 minutes, and you can see that I only made it halfway through. It's probably not necessary to score all 15 images in the gallery or in the niche rather, but what I would recommend at minimum is to score your product and then the top 3 competitors. That's what I'll say there. So once we move on, and I think we can get back to our deck here. Once we move on from image scoring, so here, just some best practices for image scoring with the 3-point test. Don't overthink it. You don't need to spend a lot of time looking at each image. Use half-point intervals. And then for visual appeal, that's that 3rd point, reference competitor images. So you're not like, try to see like which one's the best, which one's the worst, and assign, do they get the full point based on that? For the comprehension score, find people that have ideally no knowledge of the product. So if you're using your internal team, like brand managers that don't handle that product would be better. Ideally, this should be random people. Shoot for a larger sample size. Like I said, in my example, I just like brought in my girlfriend. If you can get like 5 people, I think that's better. But then the last point on here is if you have the budget for it, just leverage market research tools and they can really speed up that process. So once we're done with the categorization and our scoring, this next step, step number 3, should be extremely easy. If you go through the step 1 and step 2 and you don't go in full depth and you find that concepting is actually very difficult for you, then I'd say like go a bit deeper. And so we move on here to step 3. This is what I was talking about. So this is for the kids' binoculars. We make those 3 lists. List number 1 is like all the things you could say about the product. List number 2 is like what's most important for the shopper to know. And then we get into like what actually fits in the listing. And then what I do is once I've come up with these lists, then the step 3B for creating the asset should be really easy. And so what I've done is after my main image, I made a few more secondary image slots, and then I came up with some slots for my A+ content. And then all I did is I said, okay, what do I think based on this is the most important? What actually can fit in the listing? And I started to just write out the concept here and then the type of image. So I said, okay, image number 1 is going to be a single feature talking about magnification. And then I put together a description. So I want to talk about that our binoculars are 16x zoom. It's a zoomed in shot of the bird. It's like a kid's lifestyle in use. And then what I'm doing here is I'm saying, okay, this is our version 1. I'm assigning this to our internal team. That's Natasha. And then I have a status for when the image is actually created and what was just concepted. So I repeat this for everything. We had a graphic, a single feature about adjustability, a multi-feature saying that it was perfect for kids. And this is multi-feature because we talk about that it's small, soft plastic. It's a small size and it comes in unique colors with a title that says perfect for kids. Right? You can see this here. We got a graphic about durability, one about inclusions. We've got multi-feature, which is talking about STEM learning, sizing, and then I also am concepting out the A+ content modules. So talking about that we're a US-based seller, we've been selling for 5+ years, that we have other STEM learning products, showing the color variations, showing the applications. So it can be used in bird watching, hiking, camping, road trips, sporting events, giftability, superior lenses, and a multi-feature for STEM. And so I wanted to actually go through and do all of this. So we went and, in fact, did all of this. And so I said to the design team, I said, okay, I spent about 2.5 hours getting through steps 1, step 2, and then the concepting. And I said, I want you to go and spend 3 hours, only 3 hours in design making these images. And so they went and actually did that. We didn't do the main image yet, but we did secondary and A+. And so you can see this is like starting to bring the images to life. The designers told me like, this is not possible. We can't do it in 3 hours. And I said, I don't care if it's good. I just want to see like, what's the bare minimum that we can put in and get something done here. So these are definitely not perfect, but we have an image masterclass coming up for Seller Systems. It's free for absolutely everyone tomorrow. And the following week, we have a paid version, and we're going to, instead of putting 3 hours into this, we're going to put more like 15, 20 hours in design. And I don't know what I show here. The A+, they did not have a time to finish it. So the A+ is really not great. But the secondary images, I think we're okay. So basically, yeah, we concepted our images. We hand them off. You can see the descriptions I have, but also didn't have very much instruction to go off of. And so if you spend a little bit more time on this, I think you could even get better results. But once the images are created, then we're going to go on to our next step, which is market research. And so market research, in this example, we use Product Pinion. And basically what I was doing is testing our images that we created against the best versions in the niche. So you can see this is what I called the base test. So there was like at least 5 other images in the gallery, in the niche rather, that were all talking about magnification. There were multiple people talking about adjustability. And so we tested our images against the competitors. And as you can see here, and it wouldn't be expected that we would win all of these with 3 hours in design. That would be kind of crazy. This is a very, very competitive niche. We were able to do well in a couple. So like our sizing graphic, we came in first out of 5 competitors. For inclusions, we came in position 2 out of 5 competitors. For durability, we came in position 2. And then there were other ones where we just totally missed the mark. So like on this magnification, we were 5th out of 5th. Yeah, so basically we have 2 different type of tests. We have like a base test and a competitor. Ideally, the base test would be, you would be testing assets against themselves. So I would make like multiple versions of our inclusions graphic. I would make multiple versions of adjustability. For this example so far, we only made 1 version of each. So we just went straight to the competitor test where I'm testing our best image against the top 3 competitors. I'm not partial to any of these. Obviously, I used to work at PickFu. I have a great relationship with all 3 of these. And, don't even use these codes. I'm sure Orange Klik is the code for all 3 of these. You guys can go get like some discounts there. But the point is market research, you have 2 inputs in your business. You have time and you have money. if you have the money, just like spend the money and do market research on this stuff and you'll save yourself a lot of time. So this is a breakdown of some of the results. I guess I do show some of them here. So like some of them we did very well. Some of them, yeah, we did very well. So this is our sizing graphic. We're showing that it's perfect for small hands. You can't really see the image, but it's like showing the binoculars in a pocket. We did very well here. This is our inclusions where we came in second. And then some of them, like durability, this image might look great, but like people wanted to see the product falling. And so I show this a little bit in market research, is this section here for next step. So for example, on the durability, you can see I read the feedback from in this case, product opinion. I'm just going to open this up real quick. I read the feedback from product opinion. I look at the competitor images, and you can see this image doesn't look fantastic, but it's really good at conveying the point that this is durable for kids, that it's shockproof, you can drop it, and it's also rainproof, which is pretty important if it's an outdoor product. And you can see this girl's face. She's like, she's very surprised. So we did okay on this. Our image here got 20% of the votes, which was almost matched with, basically 2 out of 4, 3 out of 4. So the feedback here I have next steps is I want a rougher, more tragic image. I want to call it that says shockproof, and then test a variation that has add water resistant, falling in a puddle. I want to zoom in on the action. And so the point is the team put this together in 3 hours. I think in every subsequent variation, you can see this is version 1. By the time we get to like version 3, 4 on this, not this week, but next week, I'm pretty confident we're going to be able to beat everything in the niche. And so the whole point of this workflow is like, okay, get an idea of what's going on in the niche, concept out your images. You already know what people want to know about the product. You can find that out pretty easy. Now the whole point is like, how do I convey that visually better than anyone else? And not just does the image look good, but does it click? Can someone look at that image in like very short amount of time, their brain understands the purpose of that image. So let me see if there's anything else here that we need to be showing, right? We've got like, here's the image, here's our version, the results from the test, next steps. I put a link for the test just so our creative team could look at it. I also have a column for cost. Sometimes these things can add up. And then we didn't get a chance to test the A+ modules, but we'll be moving on to that. So let's get back to the deck here. I know this is a long workflow, but again, I promise you this is worth it. And I hope that this gives people, especially people who have no idea where to approach this. In the workshop that we just taught, someone's like, I know I should be doing this. I know my competitors are doing this, but I just don't know where to start. And if you're advanced, some of this is like, man, this is so overkill, Anthony. That's fine. But for the people that are a little newer to this, that don't have as much confidence, take the time and go through this. And I promise you're going to get better and better the more that you go through and do this. So once we've gone through and we've tested, ideally, we want to try to create images that are winning market research, but also keep in mind that market research, it doesn't necessarily translate one for one to the real world. You're never going to know how something performs on Amazon until you put it up on the platform and actually look at your metrics. So the last step in the workflow is going to be, second to last step is going to be upload and make your highlights inside of Rank Radar. So you're going to upload the images, your secondary images to Amazon. You're going to upload your A+ content. And then I'm going to go inside of Rank Radar. And then if you've seen our videos on SEO, you know that you can make a highlight for the keyword. Most people don't know that you can make a highlight for a date. So if you're making image or conversion click-through rate updates, you can click on the date and you can see here, uploaded V2 of secondary images and our V1 of our A+ content on October 10th. And then hopefully you're going to start to see an improvement in organic rank. So yeah, this is just upload and tracking. This gets into a lot more details in terms of metrics. It's optional if you want to fill this in. For the case study that we did with Share It Studio, I mean, they track everything. I tried to model some of that here. So like we're basically looking at like conversion 90 days before, 60, 30 days before, and then 1 week after, 2 weeks after, 30, 60, 90 for conversion. And just making sure I made a highlight in Rank Radar, just so I know when the specific date when I put something up, and then if I'm running manager experiments on that listing. The manager experiments is going to get more into step 6, which is optimize for performance. So the other thing to say is everyone always asks me like, well, I can't look at my unit session percentage. I can't look at my click-through rate because there's too much that's going on all at once. And it's difficult to track trends. You cannot look at unit session percentage or conversion rate on a daily basis. Those metrics are not going to make sense. So you're going to see it goes up and down, sometimes double-digit percentages for no reason at all. Certain days are going to be better than others. But if you look over a long enough time frame, you will be able to see changes. So on that Share It Studio example, we've been tracking the data for 3 months. If my average 90 days before was 20%, and then 3 months later, we're holding month after month, it's going 25% higher than 25%, I can be sure that what changed the conversion rate on those images isn't everything else going on in the world. It's the images, it's the A plus content. And if you wait until after Q4 and you see those images to what they had before, what they had after, it's pretty clear that the improvement in conversion, yes, there's other things. Yes, they're testing price. Yes, they're doing other things on the listing, but it's largely a result of the images. So the last step here is the last step for real is the optimize for performance. And so again, I know I keep talking about this case study, but I'm just so thrilled about it. We got this, I think we knocked it out of the park with the V1 of these images. But this is not where we stop. My hypothesis is that we're going to be able to pick up a significant increase in conversion and click-through rate just from testing alternates of our secondary images and our A+ content. And this is where I think a lot of people stop. They hire an agency, they work with their internal team, they see the initial bump, and then they say, okay, we're good. Let's go move on to other things. What I would encourage you to do is come up with a testing plan for how you're going to test one major thing once a month through Manage Your Experiments, whether that is updates to your secondary images or updates to your A+ content. Just test one different thing a month. And so the easiest thing to test is just changing the order. So this is like changing the order of images in your gallery or changing the order of how your A+ content modules are displayed. So no new content here, just order. The other option is to test information density. So you look at the winning version of your images that you currently have, and you say, okay, what would happen if we put more information in this graphic? Or more likely, what's going to happen if we would try to slim down and have even less information, less text, less visual concept? So same concept, but just different information density. And then the last one, this one takes a little bit more time, is try testing alternate design. So again, it's going to be that same graphic that talks about the inclusions in your product, but you're just going to say, hey, how could we make this look different? And then you're going to come up with some kind of like implementation timeline. This is real world what we're doing for that case study with Share It Studio. Right now, what we're doing is we're creating version 3 through version 6. We're currently testing our main image version 3, and then we're going to move on to test V2 of our A+ content, then test V2 of our secondary images. And basically, by the time we get to the end of Q1 of next year, we're going to have tested 6 different modules of A+ content and secondary images, and then we'll move on to test our 4th version of our main image. By the time we get to the 6 months of, basically once we get to testing all of this, we're going to know that we've tried every possible thing. Then you can really move on. The cool thing too is once you create all of these contents, once you create all of this content, it's not like we have to go back and revisit any of this. Like we created all of this stuff in the beginning, largely. And so you can just come up with this plan, and then someone on your internal team, all they have to do is just like go in to Manage Your Experiment once a month and then say, okay, like what were the results? What won, what lost, what can we learn? And then like, let's try the V2, V3, V4. Now you will notice that we're doing 2 tests a month. This is kind of ambitious because you should, in theory, let your Manage Your Experiments run for 4 weeks. What this is kind of banking on is that we're going to get a conclusive result inside of 2 weeks, stop the test, and then move on to test something else. I think realistically, though, it's probably going to be 1 test per month. So we might not get all the way to version 6. By the end of Q1, we might only get through 3 versions, I think is the most realistic scenario. We'll let everyone know once it's done. But again, like with a very small set of assets, you can have tests that you're running for a year. And then it's just the initial setup to do all of this. And then you can like literally not autopilot. Someone still has to go up and set up the test, see what the results are. This is for the kids' binoculars. Again, like if we were able to create winning images for this niche with 3 hours of design work, that would be insane. This is what the competitive landscape looks like for the kids' binoculars, like 21 very strong competitors. People are already doing some really good things here. So that's pretty much it. So this is where we wrap up the workflow. I know I was switching between different things, and I know this video is turning into quite a while in terms of length, but I can't encourage you enough. If you're new to this, go through and spend 6 hours. This is a great thing too. Like once you get to the end of the year, once maybe not the end of this year, you probably get through Q4, but early in Q1, get your entire team together. Even better, like go do an offsite, get like a cool Airbnb or like go to a fun place for the day and like sit the team down and pick what are the top few products in your portfolio and give small teams like 2, 3 people a group of these and have them go through and do all of this in a day. When you get to the end of that day, you're going to have some really good concepts that you can hand off to either your internal team or an agency. And, you'll be super happy that you did it. And yeah, when we're able to share the assets publicly, it would be awesome to come back on to the Orange Click channel and show it, because I think that's going to be a really cool one.
Well, thank you so much, Anthony. Very impressive framework you have put together. And I think, although, yeah, you showed it requires quite a lot of manual work, I really loved the point that you were sharing, that it's very good to go through as detailed as possible to kind of learn the process and understand and start understanding the patterns, because I think that was also a very good key point, that you need to kind of go in, analyze what others are doing, analyze what you're doing and what you could do better to start recognizing those patterns and essentially come better at conversion optimization, because not all Amazon sellers have background as you have, right, in visuals or visual optimization. So that was a really cool thing, and definitely we're looking forward for the update as well. So in the last part, you were sharing a little bit of the calendar, like how you have currently planned out how to test different versions. So to kind of summarize, so what would you say, what is kind of the ideal time frame to test out like one version? Because I think inside of Amazon, it recommends to wait, I think, about 4 weeks, right? You have currently planned to kind of test with 2 weeks, but what would you recommend for the sellers?
I would recommend a month. I think 2 weeks is very ambitious. And I did skip over this part a little bit in the end. Like there is a step 6 here. So you can see like this is our current placement for secondary images. And then I'm just saying like current month plus one. This is where we get into like our, I'm not changing the A+ for the first 3 months. First 3 months is changing secondary images. Once I've gone through, it looks like this should probably say V3. Like this would be testing V2, uh, V3, V4, and then we move on to testing our A+ content. And so you can see like all we're doing here in most of the scenarios is just changing. What I'm actually doing here is you can see this order is different from this order. So I'm not even changing the assets. I'm just changing the order of images in the gallery. And then once we find the winning order, then I move on to let's test something slightly different, our V2. And I do the same thing here. So I'm just changing the order of A+ modules. And then I'm moving on to like the winning order, but I test the V2 of brand V2 of how to install. But once a month for sure. I would, and honestly too, this is something I'm excited to see is like, do the results actually shift? That if I would have shut off the test 2 weeks in, should I have just let it go for 4? So probably just let it take the time. I know it's slow and you can get faster results through PickFu, but many people have shown that they'll test something in market research tool, will go into Amazon and it's the opposite. So like let it do its thing. Impatient as sellers, we want results right away, but you just gotta wait.
Exactly, especially once the sellers are finally kind of taking time to start testing, right? Because now they have the versions ready and they're eager to test everything out if for a while they haven't really tested anything. And also kind of to wrap up, like about like launching new products, obviously then sellers also should put into kind of similar work to come up with the initial set of visuals they are using. But what would you say after launching a product, how fast should sellers go into it and start kind of playing around with the visuals again, even if it's just the smart move of kind of changing the order of the visuals?
Yeah, I think the manager experiment test with like, if you already have good visuals, just changing the order. I think it's ambitious. Most people won't test once a month. But if you can, it doesn't take too much time and effort. Once you launch, images are for sure good for, I'd say 2 years, 1 to 2 years. It depends your niche, right? Like in this example with the shared studio, I think it's likely that either the other competitors are going to have to bring something really big to the table. Uh, like they might have to update their images within a year. But like if they don't, they're still going to probably perform very well for 2 years. Um, that being said, like if you try to refresh or update your image gallery once a year, I think you're doing very well. I probably want to do like, if people are doing every 6 months for completely new images, I think that's probably overkill. The other thing too that I want to reinforce is that the reason this case study did so well is because they had 3 lifestyle images in their secondary image gallery and no A+ content. So like going from 0 to 1 is going to be a huge impact versus if we have all of these new images that we got, the improvement of like, if we would totally redo these images again, the gains aren't going to be as significant. So what I would encourage you to do is like be really critical of what are the lowest performers in your portfolio. And then like, what's the niche where if you could become a high performer, what would be the biggest opportunity for increase? So it might not be looking at your hero Ethan. There might be some niches that you've been sleeping on, but maybe everyone else in that category has been sleeping on too. And if you would actually just go and hit really hard and try to have really great images there, it might be a bigger opportunity for increase versus, yeah, that's what I'll say.
All right. And if you're watching us until now, then you obviously are now understanding that Anthony knows a lot about visuals and conversion optimization. So if you have any questions about the workflow he just shared or just overall about conversion optimization, then feel free to leave your questions as comments below the video as well, because then we can ask Anthony to come back to the video and answer those additional questions. We're also going to have the link to Data Dive down to the description below. But Anthony, just to highlight, what's the best way to learn more about Data Dive and all of the features you have, and also contact you if somebody wants to ask further questions?
Yeah, I would say just join Data Dive office hours. So we teach a totally free, you don't even need to be a Data Dive user, 3 times a week, one for North America, one for Europe, one for Asia Pacific. We have a different topic every week. And we've already covered this. We have our YouTube channel as well. But if this seemed like, wow, this is a lot of work, this is the time intensive version. And the next few weeks, we're going to have, if you want to spend some money on this, here's Product Pinion, here's IntelliV, here's PickFu's approach to conversion optimization, which is probably like half or a quarter of the time, but you just spend a few $100s doing market research. So yeah, check out office hours, check out our YouTube channel, and then I'm sure we'll be back with other videos as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to explain us the workflow and also sharing that as content with our sellers so they could go into their own product listings and start straight away. So thank you again, and I hope to see you soon.
Thanks so much, LISETT.
I hope this video will help you to optimize your product images and increase your conversion rates. If you are interested in trying Data Dive for yourself, check a special offer in the video description as well as the link. And if you have additional questions, leave them in the comments section below. Also, if you want to support our work, don't forget to hit like and subscribe buttons below. And now I recommend you to watch another video where you will learn how to use Data Dive for keyword research and product validation. So check this out.